Hello everyone, hi, welcome to the channel of Wall Street Mojo. Watch the video till the end, and also if you are new to this channel, then you can subscribe us by clicking the bell icon. Today we have a topic with us, is called preemptive rights. Now, what exactly this is all about? We'll try and get this topic in a very detailed format. Let's begin. First, what is or what are preemptive rights? This is what we need to understand. So preemptive rights refers to the right available to the shareholders. They have to maintain their ownership stake by giving them the chance to buy proportionate interest in any additional issuance of the common stock in future. So these are the rights that have been granted to certain equity shareholders, under which they are given an option to purchase additional shares of the company stock before the same is offered to any new investor. These are the rights available to the existing shareholders to maintain their proportion of the ownership, to maintain the ownership of a company. Now, this is done to the proportion of the ownership in the of the company. It is maintained by acquiring the proportional shares in the additional stock issuance of the company. So thereby, they ensure that the shareholders' ownership interest does not get diluted, even if companies issues more shares. Now, in short, the preemptive rights are important to shareholders because it allows the existing shareholders of a company to avoid any involuntary dilution of their ownership stake by giving them a chance to buy proportional interest in the future issuance of the common stock. Now, these preemptive rights are also known as subscription. It is also known as the subscription rights, or anti-dilutive. It's anti-dilutive rights or subscription privilege. So this is commonly provisions found in the shareholders agreement. It is found in shareholders agreement, and the preemptive rights are important to shareholder because it is used to prevent the new investors from reducing the existing ownership percentage of the existing shareholders. So it is pertinent to note that here that having those rights does not require an existing shareholder to purchase the additional shares, compulsorily. So the shareholders can choose not to make use the rights in such cases, and the shares are sold to new investors and existing shareholder proportion to the ownership in the business. Now, second, why are this preemptive rights important? This is a very important topic. See, the investing in the initial stage of the company is risky proportion. Early stage investors would like to ensure that the risk they have taken should be rewarded with the due returns once the company becomes successful. These rights are important to shareholders, because it grants the shareholder an opportunity but not an obligation to keep their initial ownership that is retained even when the company goes for additional round of equity issuance, by giving them opportunity of the right of the first refusal. That is only when the existing shareholders are not subscribing to the fresh issue in the proportion to their existing ownership, the company can bring in new investors, and result in the proportion declines in their ownership. Now, the another reason these rights are important to the shareholders, because it protects the investors from the risk of new shares being issued at a price that is completely lower than the price. The price is lower than the price that is paid by the previous investors. So this is particularly more relevant in case of the convertible preference shares. So let's take one example so that you surely get some really good insight regarding this particular thing. We'll take example number one, the preemptive rights example number one. See, let's say there's a company called Ray International. They have issued a convertible preference stock, that is CPS, to P, let's say, is a person at the rate of $15 per share. $15 per share. Okay, fine. Now, this is convertible at the end of the 2 years of time span. So that's a lock-in period. It means P can convert the preference stock into common stock by paying $15, as you can see each to Ray International after a specified period, that is 2 years in this case. So Ray International decided to go public and issued equity shares at closely around $12 per share to general public. So now P converts his preferred stock into equity shares at the rate of 15 against 12 per share that is offered to general public. So this will clearly devalue the incentive to convert. However, if the right states that if Ray International issues shares at a price that is lower in the previous financing round, the preference shareholders, in this case P, gets more shares of common stock when he or she converts. So in such a scenario, this rights protected the interest of P from the risk of new shares being issued at a price that is lower than the previous issue. Now also, these rights are very important to shareholders because it incentivizes the company to perform well so that they can issue stocks at closely higher valuation, and whenever they need arises, so at that time they can issue that. We'll take an example number 2 to understand. Let's understand more with the help of the more example. Let's say there's a company called Ananya Corp, and that have issued 1,000 shares of stock outstanding. Over here K owns let's say 100 shares of Ananya, and thereby effectively holding 10% of the entire corporations. Thereby it is effectively holding 10% of the entire corporation. Okay, the board of directors of Ananya Corporation decided to sell another 1,000 shares of the corporation for 20 each at the rate of 20 each. Now if K is not provided with the preemptive right, this would dilute his ownership of the shares. The number of shares outstanding before the issue was 1,000 shares. The number of shares owned by K, okay, that is 100 shares. The K holding in Ananya Corporation, K in Ananya Corporation is 100 divided by 1,000, alt H N P, that's percent. Okay, and the number of shares of the fresh issue of 1,000 shares, that is 1,000 initially plus 1,000 additional shares issued. So the number of shares owned by K is 100, and K holding in corporation will be 100 shares divided by 2,000. So this has to be, yeah, so that is 5% holding now. So K holding in Ananya Corporation declined from 10 to 5%. Okay, in case of the fresh issuance of the right, and if these rights are not available, let's assume that preemptive rights are available to K, and he exercises those rights by subscribing to the fresh issue in proportion to the existing ownership, then the number of the shares outstanding before the issue was 1,000. Number of shares owned by K 100. K holding in Ananya is 10%. Number of the fresh issue is 2,000 shares, and the number of the additional shares that is subscribed by K is 100 shares at the rate into 20. So that comes to 2,000, right? So it will be 100 shares plus 100 shares, that is 200 divided by 2,000. That comes down to 10% if he subscribes, right? So this is how the whole example works. Now I'll take you to some of the types of the preemptive rights. What are the types? First is by weighted average. Now see, under the existing shareholders is provided with the right to purchase the shares at a price that takes into consideration the change in the old price and the new offered price. Second, it's called Ratchet. Under this, existing shareholders is provided with the right to buy the shares at a new lower price. Now I'll take you quickly on the advantage part of the preemptive right. So it becomes easy for the business to raise funds, for easy fundraising from the existing early stage investor and venture capitalists, as they are already familiar with the company, and it avoids the cost of due diligence, time delays, and excessive negotiations with the new investors. So if existing investors are providing additional funding, it saves the management in searching new investors. And the disadvantage is that it avoids the problem of concentrations of ownership in the few early stage investors only, and allows the business to exercise more control over the business, and limits the size of the individual investors' ownership in business. So it helps the company to negotiate better when the new investors and the command higher valuation for the business than the existing investor. So many new investors intend to hold significant ownership in the business and want to promise new investor that he or she will be able to acquire a certain percentage in case where the right is being provided to early stage investors, as business is uncertain, and as to whether or not early investors intend to exercise this preemptive rights. So that's it for this particular topic. If you have learned and enjoyed watching this video, please like and comment on this video and subscribe to our channel for the latest updates. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.